You can walk in the dark or you can turn on the light. You can be surrounded by beautiful art, some of which Susie painted, some of which we bought. My mom loved Betty Boop. More paintings of Susie, paintings we bought. Keyboard in which or on which we occasionally play a tune or two or three. More paintings from Susie, and she assures me that is not a self-portrait, although it sure looks like one. And an homage to Pablo Picasso. Some Peter Max enhanced pictures bought from a particular art gallery on a ship. Today we're very briefly going to discuss the 4 P's of your business. First P that Checky Financial and Checky Consulting commonly address is perspective. Turns out that most business owners and employees may or may not be gifted with perspective of what the heck is really going on, what's actually helpful, what their processes are, which is the second P, and the third P, which is the fourth P. Oh yeah, profits. Once you understand through perspective what your business is, what your procedures are, where the bottlenecks are, usually the owner, or the non-leading manager, or that troublesome employee who really wishes he or she or they were doing something else. And we interview the folks that are involved in the processes and ask them how they would improve this place. Document that. Come up with some analysis of the financial statements, letting you know where the profits are, which is essential. Encouraging you also to let people know through training what it is your expectations are, and find out from them what their expectations are, so you can actually have a self-managing, business. Thank you, Dan Sullivan and team, for coming up with that term. How do we do this? Let's say a couple of stories. JD was a very gifted and talented second-generation body and fender manager. Started out sweeping floors when he was a little kid. Went on to work in the paint shop part. Got promoted by KB because he saw in JD some capability to run a body and fender shop. How did JD actually do that? Well, what he really did, in addition to training his folks properly and letting them know how things needed to be done, and finding a guy who could actually do the day-to-day stuff, he went out and negotiated with a bunch of different insurance companies to be their choice garage, body and fender shop, to do their repairs, particularly specializing in Fords, since that's the dealership in which he was working. How did that work out? Well, eventually, that very capable dealership got sold by the family who had owned it for years and years to a consolidating firm. The consolidating firm would gather everybody together and settle up again. JD's shop turned out to be the best run, most profitable of all of them. Then they wanted to pick his brain, and we kept telling him, along with his good friend who was in the paint supply business, the biggest paint supplier in the United States, to open up his own shop. And he finally did. After about 3 years of talking to him on that, he went on to own 5 shops with a couple of different partners. Then got to the point where it was just time to sell them because real estate was so valuable at the time in Texas, plus the businesses themselves were. Got some great payouts, negotiated with a preferred type of sale in terms of tax advantage sale. Bought some more real estate, developed some more shops, and actually let other people run them. So what does he get to do? Well, JD likes to play golf. He shoots in the 80s. He does that 3 times a week despite being 70 years of age. Likes riding his horses, harvesting hay. And he also had to realize that his son, who he loved to death, was not going to take over the businesses because the son is really an outdoor guy. Would have guessed that. Would rather harvest hay and be off on his own. That's another good story on that subject. Had a lady call us and say, gee, I've got to come and see you before 12/31 because my husband's about to turn 50 and needs some more life insurance because our old life insurance has gone way too expensive. In the history of the universe, I've never gotten a call like that before that day. They came in, we talked to them some, established the fact that the husband was a very nice man, but didn't generate revenue, where his wife, who was the main worrier in terms of this, generated just a little under $1 million a year. And yes, looked at the tax return to verify that it was real money. She was in a partnership that was a handshake partnership, which is real popular in Texas, a real problem when it comes to process and procedure, because commonly handshake partnerships implode. Mentioned to them at the first meeting they need to save a particular amount of money on a regular basis, which is $10,000 a month based on their income and their lack of resources. And I mentioned to them that probably this partnership was going to implode. And it did. Negotiated a sale, worked with their attorney, who was supposed to be very skilled at doing that. Eventually it did work out. She did get paid her several $1 million payout, got rehired as a consultant, and now invests wherever she wants to go and has several other businesses, all of which are documented. So is her estate plan. There was another Band-Aid situation that we had to address with them. It's amazing what people do and don't do. So we help people get perspective in terms of what's going on around them. Plus, we can actually, being a certified public accountant since 1976 and keeping my licenses up to date, help people actually get the right answers from their team, which includes their professional advisors and lawyers. Helpful to have done litigative support for 5 years as well. That business is working very well, and now she has several others in a couple of different states. We've also consulted with one of her other guys in terms of helping him realize his dreams also, and gotten him slightly more realistic in terms of his expectations. Last business we'll talk about is a dental practice, second generation dentist. Took the business over from dad, paid the dad real money for the business, and then discovered that dad really enjoyed being liked by his patients. It's a nice way of saying dad didn't really do a complete job, and young son, not so young anymore, excuse me, had some wonderful equipment, found a lot more stuff that dad didn't bother to mention to the patients, and had a friendly staff, which was kind of dysfunctional. So what did we do? We consulted with them, and him suggested that, is there exactly one person in that group that you couldn't live without in terms of a dental practice? Is there one person with whom you could just run the whole practice and fire everybody else? And he identified who that person was. He kept her, and thanks to his amazing wife, who's also in human resources independently of this firm practice, fired everybody. A regular process, hired some new folks. Business is working a lot better, helped them review and get some new accounting help that actually responded rather than ignored. So that's three short stories in terms of the gazillion businesses we've helped over time. So to review the 4 P's, 1 is perspective, which is one of our specialties. 2 is process. 3, people. And then finally 4, everybody's favorite, profits. And please remember, if more is all you want, more will continue to never be enough. Action, call to action. We suggest that you add some perspective to your organization. We're happy to help with that. And sorry for having not mentioned this all the time we were here, since Andre Norman years ago said to me, gee, I finally know what you do for a living. And Michael Burnoff said, hey, you can separate yourself from everybody else in that genius network because you can actually do business consulting thanks to your wisdom, your background, and your capability to do it with humor and facts. Have fun, be well. Let me help you get from here and now to wow.